Spider-Man Hostile Takeover, Chapter 35. His face was hacked into lines and angles of rage. He was onto them, which meant they wouldn't get another chance to steal the files. They had blown the one opportunity they had to stop Osborn from making him untouchable. If he tried to stop them from leaving, and that seemed a certainty, Spider-Man could beat him. He hoped. He and the Kingpin had squared off before, and it was a mistake to underestimate the big man. He was large, yes, but shockingly fast and devastatingly strong. There were few opponents in the world, even people with enhanced abilities, who could stay upright after one of his best punches. Even so, Spider-Man's smaller size and greater speed gave him advantages. If evasion was the goal, then the web-slinger had the advantage. Still, just one mistake would exact a heavy price. Maya was also fast, Spider-Man thought, and elusive. She could get away, but he worried she wouldn't try. She was smart as hell, no doubt about that, but she was also driven by rage. The newfound knowledge that the man who had pretended to care for her had killed her father. He hoped the strategic side of her would be in full command here. If so, there was no reason the two of them couldn't get out, regroup, and live to fight another day. No reason, except for the imposter. The doppelganger came in from the hall, blazingly fast, and leapt up to the ceiling. While it was impossible to read his expression under the mask, Spider-Man felt certain he was smirking at him. Once again, the fire began to burn in his core. Time slowed down. Spider-Man's emotion went still. This man, Bingham, had dressed like him, had killed innocent people. He killed Anika and Ramsey. And there, next to him, as though holding his leash, stood Fisk. These people were pure evil, and he was going to stop them. He was going to make them pay. In his mind, he could feel what it would be like to hit that madman, to bring him down, to make him suffer the way he'd made others suffer. He wasn't just going to web him up and let the police come, only to release him. He was going to... He didn't know what he was going to do, but it would hurt. That much he knew. "It's true," Fisk said to Maya, his voice resonant with sadness. "When they told me you betrayed me to this nuisance, I didn't believe it. Yet, here we are." "Is it any less than you deserve?" Maya spat. "You killed my father. You raised me to believe a lie." She dropped into a defensive stance. "After all I've done for you," Fisk said, "you believe his deceptions? Think, Maya. Think of what your life would have been without me. Think before you decide whom to trust." "Without you, my father would still be alive." "Without me," he countered, "he'd have been killed long before he left Montana. Has that never occurred to you? Once I saved his life, it belonged to me, and it was mine to do with as I pleased." He was vaguely aware of this conversation, as if it was happening at the distant end of a winding tunnel. But then he snapped back into the moment. He would have justice. He would, but he had to be smart. He had to keep his head in the game. They weren't going to win anything in the next few minutes. No amount of punching or webbing was going to put this matter to rest. Because whatever happened, Fisk would still have his leverage over Osborn. I worried about Maya being emotional, he told himself. I need to worry about myself too. I need to play this smart. So, that sounds like a confession, Spider-Man said, though it occurred to him that Maya wouldn't hear anything he said. You know what? The doppelganger said. I'm bored. Let's get to the part where we kill him. Suddenly he put his hands to his cheeks. Oh no! The deaf girl doesn't know what I'm talking about. He began to wave his hands around in a mockery of sign language. We are going to kill you, he said in a sing-song voice. You and the fake Spider-Man. Wait, I'm the fake? The web-slinger said. That's actually your position? Are you also Alexander the Great? You are the fake, the imposter snapped. I'm the original. They made me. I'm not a false Spider-Man. Afraid to act? Afraid to do what's necessary? My hands are covered in blood, and I'm the Blood Spider. Yes, that's my true name. Blood Spider. And it's super cool, Spider-Man responded. You're an amazing big boy for sure. He paused. So, where's the thumb drive again? Safe, the imposter said. It's safe, but it's not in the safe. It's safe. Enough, Fisk shouted. Kill him. He gestured towards Spider-Man. But be warned, I want Maya unharmed. You won't have me at all, she said. Maya ran at Fisk, picking up her laptop and whisking at him like it was a throwing star. It spun, end over end, and looked as deadly as any weapon as it hurled towards its target. Fisk barely dodged out of the way before she leapt into the air and slammed her heel into his chest. We're not supposed to be fighting, Spider-Man thought. We're supposed to be skedaddling. Yet there was no way to tell Maya that without lifting his mask. And though fighting was the wrong move here, Spider-Man would have loved to watch Willie get pounded by someone a tenth of his weight. Unfortunately, he had problems of his own. The imposter, Blood Spider, as he called himself, was coming at him. He was scatter-shooting his webs, so Spider-Man had no choice but to go on the defensive. Where'd you get the webs? He asked as he dodged out of the way. They made 'em for me, Blood Spider bellowed, because I'm Spider-Man. The web-slinger had learned a thing or two from Echo about fighting someone who mimicked his style, but this was different. She moved like Spider-Man did, but the Blood Spider had a style all his own. Spider-Man liked to think of his fighting style as employing surgical precision. He fought larger, stronger, tougher enemies, but he won. Or at least kept himself from losing, by being careful and deliberative. His moves might look spontaneous, and they often were when playing defense, but he carefully chose the moments to go on the offense. A guy who was smaller and, yes, sometimes weaker than the people he fought had to choose his moments. If he was a scalpel, Blood Spider was a hammer. There was no nuance in his attack. He filled the space with webs. He wound up for the roundhouse punches and tried to move in for powerful jabs. He wouldn't stand a chance against me in the open city, Spider-Man thought. But in the tight confines of Fisk's office, it would be easy to get jammed up. He didn't have room to set up attacks and defenses. All he could do was avoid getting hit and try to hit back. This was going to turn into a brawl, and that meant they'd be playing by Blood Spider's rules. He needed Maya's attention. But she was locked in a deadly face-off of her own with Fisk, who had the upper hand. He'd managed to get one of his massive hands around her throat and was slamming her against the wall. "You know nothing about gratitude," he said in a disturbingly quiet voice. For a gratitude seminar, head pounding seemed like the wrong pedagogical tool. Spider-Man turned to lend Maya a hand. In that moment of distraction, Blood Spider shot out a web that pinned his right wrist to the wall. Bingham then released another that hit his left arm near the elbow. The web slinger yanked hard. Blood Spider's webs were impressive, but he noted with some satisfaction. They were an inferior product. They weren't as strong. He doubted an ordinary person could break free, but he could. He was loose and ducking as Blood Spider tried to land a rapid punch to his head. Spider-Man hit back hard, a blow to his stomach, his ribs, and when he turned slightly, to his kidneys. Blood Spider was momentarily stunned. Spider-Man unleashed his own wave of webbing, pinning his opponents to the floor. He then spun and sent a web around Fisk's ankles. He yanked hard, using all of his strength, and toppled the huge man. Another web to keep him pinned to the ground, at least for a while, hopefully as long as he needed. He ran to Maya, lifting up the bottom of his mask as he did so. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head. "Nothing serious." "Time for the escape plan," he said. "But the thumb drive." "It's not here," he said. "And getting killed won't help us." She nodded, took out the device, a modifier car fob, and hit the red button. The window burst open. Peter grabbed her, found a target for his webs, and leapt into the air. It took a lot of trust for her to put herself in his hands this way, he guessed. She didn't look frightened, though, and she didn't wriggle out of his grasp. As they soared into the night at speeds that would terrify any rational person, she didn't even squeeze her eyes shut. Bingham broke free of the false Spider-Man's webs. They were stronger than his, he hated to admit, but not beyond his ability. Fisk struggled, though, which was funny. He pulled out a device designed to dissolve his own webbing. It didn't affect the imposter's strands, but it did help clear out the room a little. He went over to Fisk to help yank him free. Once mobile, the big man rose like a monster in an old horror movie, waving his arms and stumbling forward. His fists opened and closed in a repetitive, almost soothing rhythm. "This," Bingham observed, "is where the big baby has his temper tantrum." "God damn it!" Fisk screamed. He slammed the fist into a desk. It cracked in at least 3 places and collapsed. "Called it," Bingham said. Fisk strode over to the safe and peered inside. "It's empty," he shouted. "They took everything. They took the thumb drive. Do you know what this means? The entire operation is compromised." Fisk drove his fist into the wall, sending chips of wood paneling flying like shrapnel. Bingham hopped into one of the remaining desks. He made a show of examining his fingernails, which was silly because he wore gloves. He liked the effect, though. He liked showing Fisk that he had nothing but contempt for that fat man. "This is one of those good news, bad news type situations," he said. "The good news is that they didn't get the thumb drive." Fisk slowly turned to him. There was a light in his eyes as his rage zeroed in on a new target. "What have you done?" "The bad news," Bingham continued, "is that your safe is made by First Line. Yes, It's earned its reputation as being the manufacturer of some of the most secure safes on the planet. The thing is, it's a privately held company, which is why they didn't make a big deal out of being bought by Oscorp last month. Fisk took a step toward him. His face was a mask of rage. So the safe, the other safes, the one at all your buildings, all your hideouts. Bingham waved his arms around theatrically. Not so safe. These safes. We thought we knew about all of them, but that's where owning the company comes in handy. There were a couple we missed, but once we had the company records, we were able to track them down. I mean, if you have any safes by another company, then the plan is shot. But if not, he shrugged, then I win. Osborn, Fisk growled. He put you up to this. I'm not going to say I could have done it without him, Bingham replied. We've all got our skills. Outwitting fat people was one of his. But there are some things Norm doesn't know, that he doesn't control. He thinks I'll be eternally grateful to him for helping me find my true self, for allowing me to go from being Spider-Man in my mind to the Spider-Man in the world. And I am. But that doesn't mean I'm his puppet. I'm no one's puppet. Fisk gritted his teeth and stared at Bingham. His nostrils flared, and his breath came out in short, hard bursts. He planted a foot hard on the ground as if he was ready to charge, but he did not move. Not yet. Anger might course through his veins, but he wasn't ready to let go of rational thought. What do you want? He demanded. Where are all the thumb drives? There is no all, Lardo, Bingham said. There is only one. I destroyed all the rest. Osborn said to bring it to him, but I'm not going to do that. And do you know why? Would you like to know? I'll tell you. It's because this one is mine. What do you want for it? Fisk asked. I can make you rich. I can give you power. Soon, I'll be in a position to pull the strings of the city. Not if I hand the drive over to Osborn. You won't, Bingham corrected. So, it's not a question of what you can do for me, but what I can do for you. You see, there's been a change in the organizational chart. You still control Osborn, but I control you. That means I'm not just Spider-Man anymore. I'm also the kingpin of crime. I'm the kingpin of blood. Fisk charged forward, fists raised, head down. His will to think, to plan, to strategize was gone. He wanted only to crush the enemy. Bingham was expecting it, but he wasn't expecting the speed the big man could muster. Fisk landed a massive punch to Bingham's head before he could dodge. Ringing filled his ears and lights danced on the periphery of his vision. He was sliding across the floor. He would have been finished if he'd been an ordinary man, but he wasn't ordinary anymore. He hadn't been ordinary since the experiments in Osborn's labs. Osborn hadn't found the cure he was looking for, but he found something else. A way to make Spider-Man. It killed everyone else they tried it on, which just proved that there can only be one Spider-Man in the world. That was why the imposter had to die. Every moment he breathed, he weakened Bingham. Anyone could see that. Bingham had other problems at the moment, such as the giant who was barreling toward him again. This time he was ready. He knew what Fisk could do, how fast he could move. and that made it all the easier. He leapt up and over, landing behind his attacker. He yanked on Fisk's pants, hoping to pull them down. Nothing would throw a guy like Fisk more than a good humiliation. Those pants seemed to be glued on, though, and Bingham leapt back to get out of Fisk's range. "I will kill you!" Fisk growled. "You need to accept the new order," Bingham said, leaping up to the ceiling. "You thought you owned Osborne. Now I do. I can still make him do what you want. So long as you understand that you work for me." He let the webs fly. 4, 5, 6, 7 blasts to his face. 7 was a lucky number, but not for Fisk, who couldn't breathe. Bingham knew better to punch him in the stomach. His fist would get lost in there. The face would be satisfying, but it might dislodge some of the webs. So he went for the knees to topple him, and then kicks to the ribs. Fisk grunted and writhed. The pain, the suffocation, the humiliation. It must have been terrible for a man who thought himself so powerful. Now he was just another stupid kid in a stupid town whose mother ignored him and who got laughed at by everyone. Bingham thought back to another time. Another fat person, another suffocation, the pain, the terror, the absolute and abject terror. When you did something, it was no longer something that could be done to you. Bingham realized this was startling clarity. He was setting himself free, liberating himself from his past. He was taking the final steps toward becoming Blood Spider, the only true Spider-Man. He activated the device and dissolved the webs. Fisk gasped as his lungs filled with air. "So, this is how it is," Bingham said. "You can be my friend, or you can be my victim. Which do you choose?" Fisk stood there, opening and closing his fists, breathing deeply until it slowed. Then he peered at Bingham, and his face became unreadable. "Friend," he said. "Good," Bingham said. "You'll like being my friend." He didn't trust Fisk, of course. The man would betray him the first chance he got. And Osborne? When he found out he'd been outsmarted, that was going to be quite the blow. But they would learn. They would all learn. Blood Spider couldn't be outsmarted. Once a person named Michael Bingham could be used and toyed with and tossed away, those days were over.